Hi everyone, this is Anna and welcome to my sewing tutorial. Today I want to show you how I made this overshirt. You can find a PDF pattern on my website or Etsy shop. Link in description below this video. Let's get started. To make this shirt you will need 2 meters of flannelette or wool fabric, about 1 meter of the woven fusible interfacing, thread same color as fabric, metal buttons, and bias tape about 8 meters. This tape you can buy from the fabric store or you also can make it yourself. Use polyester lining fabric. Just simply cut 3.5 centimeters on bias. Fold 8 mm from one side and press with iron. Fold another side and press as well. Then fold bias in half and press. I usually make one side to stick out, so when I will apply my tape, stitch will definitely catch the underneath layer. I have a flannelette fabric here and it's very soft and got some kind of a pile, which makes fabric even more soft. Before I will start to cut details, I need to decatize it. With medium temperature, I'm steaming all over the fabric from both sides. When working with checkered fabrics, always match the pattern. I've cut all details: front panel, front closure facing, back detail, yoke, sleeve, sleeve facing, cuffs, front pockets, flaps, inseam pockets, under collar and collar details. Some details need to be fused with interfacing: front closure facing, cuffs, sleeve facing, flaps, under collar and collar. I'm gonna double these details straight away before I start stitching. When I fuse details, I'm cutting fusing excess. On the front details, make sure to mark pocket notches. And also mark front pockets placement with chalk. Separate front details and place inseam pockets details to their notches. Pin them and stitch. Take the bias tape and cover seam. Pin tape to the seam and stitch on both details. Take the back detail, unfold it, and place inseam pockets to the notches. Pin it there and stitch on both side seams. In the same way we made seams at the front, we will do at the back. Pin bias tape to the seam and stitch on both sides. Take the yoke details, separate them and place first one to the back panel. And the other one to the other side. Pin yoke all the way and make a stitch. Then turn the details and make a top stitch by foot width. Take the pocket details and place non-fused flap details on top of fused ones with face side inside. Pin each flap detail all around. Mark fold line on a pocket detail and fold 1 cm first, and then follow the marked line. Pin seam all the way, and then stitch flap details with opening at the top, and stitch pocket top seams. Carefully trim corners on the flaps. Try not to cut the stitch. And turn out the details. Then press them with the iron. On the pocket details, fold side seams and bottom seam by 1 cm and press it with iron. On the flap details, make a top stitch by foot width. Place pocket onto the front overshirt panel, pin it all around. Then take the flap detail and place it to the marked line. Pin it as well. Make 1 stitch closer to the edge on the pocket and make 2nd stitch on a foot width from 1st stitch. Also stitch the flap. Fold flap to the bottom and top stitch on a foot width. Take the front closure facing and take the bias tape. Pin tape to the round seam on both details and stitch bias tape to the seam. Place closure facing to the front panel and pin it. Then stitch closure facing on both front panels. Press seam towards front panel. Then fold closure facing and press seam again. Place front details to the back with face side inside. Matching shoulder seams and pin only to 1 layer of the yoke. Turn over the other yoke layer and match it with the shoulder seam. Pin all 3 layers together and stitch both shoulder seams. Turn over the shoulder seams. Take the sleeve split facing and fold seams by 0.5 cm. Then press each seam with iron. Take the sleeves and make sure to mark all of the notches. Also mark sleeve split with chalk and transfer line to other side as well. Place the split facing to the wrong side of the sleeve, matching the marked line, and pin it. Then make a forth and back stitch. Carefully cut between those stitches. Turn over the facing and pin it. Then stitch all around the facing to secure it. Once both sleeves are done, we need to attach them inside the armhole. Start by pinning center of the sleeve with shoulder seam. Pin sleeve all the way armhole. Once both sleeves pinned, stitch them in. Now I'm going to use bias tape to cover seam allowance. I'm pinning the tape around armhole and making a stitch on both sleeves. Using tailor's pressing hem, press the armhole seam towards sleeve. Make a top stitch around the armhole by foot width. Join side seams together with inseam pockets. Pin them and stitch both sides. Now I'm covering side seam allowance with bias tape. I'm pinning tape all the way the seam and then stitching on both sides. Take cuff details and press them in half. Press 1 cm at one top side. Fold 2 pleats on a sleeve bottom and then attach cuffs. Pin the cuff completely and stitch on both sleeves. Pin side seams on the cuffs and stitch on both sleeves. Turn over all corners and fold the seam allowance inside. Pin the seam and make a stitch to secure it. And after, make another stitch all around cuff by foot width. Take the collar details and place one detail on top of the other, with face side inside. Pin details together and stitch. Carefully cut off the corners and turn out the collar. Press collar with iron. Then make a top stitch by foot width. Take an under collar details, separate them and fold 1 cm on the unfused detail. Now take the fused under collar detail and place the collar on top. Pin it together and stitch. Pin collar to the neckline and stitch. Take another under collar detail and place it to the collar. Pin it together and stitch. Cover seam allowance with under collar. Pin it, covering the seam completely and stitch. Make another stitch all around under collar by foot width. Cover the bottom seam allowance with bias tape. Pin it all the way and stitch. Turn the front-facing closure around the hem and pin. Then stitch on both sides. Turn out the corners. Turn 1 cm at the bottom and pin all the way. Once the hem is pinned, make a foot width stitch starting from the neckline, moving to the bottom and going up to another neckline side. After stitching, press the hem with iron. Now I'm going to make a loops using my domestic sewing machine. My machine makes a half automatic loops, and here is how it works. So first I'm putting the stitch setting to the loop diagram, and at the second setting I will follow the numbers. So I'm putting number 1 firstly, which is going to make a left side of the loop. Then I will turn to number 2, which will make bottom loop part. Then I will turn to number 3, which will make right side of the loop. And lastly, I will turn to number 4, which will make a top part of the loop. Also, I need to change my irregular foot to a special loop maker foot. I'm always trying my first loop on a scrap of the same fabric, just to make sure I'm happy with my settings. Once I made sure my loop is perfect, I'm starting to make a loops on a garment. Once all loops are done, we can install the metal buttons. I'm gonna need a hammer and something flat to put under the fabric. I'm taking a sharp part of the button and pulling it through the fabric. Then I'm placing button on top and drive in with the hammer. Then I'm nicking all of my loops using a snips. And here's the result. Let me know what do you think in the comments below. If you were inspired to make this jacket, you can download a ready-to-sew PDF pattern. Link you can find in the description below this video. If you want to see more of my projects, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Also, I'm inviting you to follow me on Instagram. I'm sharing the sneak peeks of upcoming projects and different sewing tips and tricks. And I will see you in my next tutorial. Bye!